I am here this afternoon in San Antonio, Texas, with Elisabeth Sabaditsch-Wolff, who just flew in. Her home is in Austria, and it has been a pleasure meeting you early this morning and getting back with you now. I appreciate that very much. For those that are not familiar with you, let's give them a little background. Now, you speak beautiful English. How come?
Well, the reason is very simple. I am a diplomat's brat.
Oh.
My father is a retired diplomat who started his career in Geneva, Switzerland, which is where I was born, and then moved on to New York. So I went to kindergarten in New York, attended kindergarten in New York, memorized the Pledge of Allegiance.
Very good.
Which I didn't understand at the time, but I still memorized it. I still know it now. And we then moved on to Iran, which was a very interesting experience. We might want to get into that later, because it is part of my life, which has shaped me, and which is one of the reasons I'm here right now. So I went to school in Iran until the revolution began, and then we moved back to Vienna. And from 1983 to 1987, my father was posted to Chicago.
Oh.
So I attended the Academy of the Sacred Heart in Chicago and went to grade school, 2 years of grade school, junior high, and 2 years of high school. And then we returned to Vienna, and at the end of the 1980s, I graduated from high school in Vienna, and I've been busy ever since and doing my thing. So.
Well, compliments on your English, because German is your first language?
I would say
possibly?
My mother tongue, but my stronger language is English.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
All right, interesting. Okay, you brought up something of great interest about your time in Iran. So how did you end up there, and what transpired?
My father was posted straight from New York to Tehran.
Culture shock?
I would say so, a big culture shock. Although, when you're 6 years old, you don't feel it as much. Yeah. But it was a culture shock, not so much as it could have been, because when we moved to Iran, the Shah was still in power, so it was easy living. There was a beer brewery.
Oh my!
Yeah. We had a lot of beer, and I started drinking beer when I was 5 years old. But don't tell anybody.
Well, that's kind of the German and Austrian culture too, isn't it? To some degree.
Yes and no. The reason I started drinking beer was we were in the desert. We were camping in the desert.
Oh.
There's not a lot of water. And I said to my dad when we set up camp, "Dad, I'm thirsty. Can I have some water from that barrel over there?" And he's like, "No, you can't drink that water. We use it for washing only. You have a beer." So I've been drinking beer ever since, and for me, it's the most normal thing in the world. But it's usually water, so don't worry. I'm not drunk or anything like that. So the biggest culture shock was not moving from New York to Iran. The biggest shock was when the revolution began. So I attended school. First grade, primary school, first grade, at a German school, and all of a sudden I wasn't able to attend that school anymore, because later on when I was older, I was told that there were the dead piled up in front of the school, that the school authorities or the headmaster or whoever it wasn't able to remove the bodies in time for us to get to school. So we had a lot of cancellations. I missed most of second grade because of the revolution. So
for those of us that, obviously were not there, what was going on at that time? What was transpiring that there's dead bodies in front of the school? Well,
the revolution began, and people were opposing the Shah, the former emperor.
What time frame are we talking about?
We're talking about 78.
Okay.
And Khomeini, the Ayatollah Khomeini, returned in February of 79. He returned triumphantly from Paris to Tehran. and the Shah was deposed, and he had to leave, the country to get it together with his family, and he went to the U.S. first, I think, to get treatment for his cancer. And if I remember correctly, he ended up in Egypt. I think he died in Egypt, but if memory serves me correct, I'm not sure about that.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting also because my parents went to one of the Shah's last state dinners.
Wow.
They attended one of
they
his
were
last
diplomat.
dinners. Yes.
Wow.
And I still remember my parents getting into the official diplomatic car with the driver, all dressed up to go off to see the Shah. My mother skied with Empress Faradiba in one of the greatest ski areas I've ever skied in, which is high in the mountains above Tehran.
Oh my!
Yeah.
Wow!
Yeah, I'm telling you, it is fascinating because you go from one extreme, and I'm talking from one freedom extreme to the next. Because for a 6-year-old child, all of a sudden one day I woke up and I remember the chanting in the streets. I remember the black-clad women. All of a sudden everybody was in the chador, the black...
What was your impression of that as a child?
I remember being confused, somewhat scared. I didn't understand what was going on. All I understood that all of a sudden it's completely different. At the end of 1978, and I remember this very vividly, it was early in the morning, we packed up our stuff, my sister, my mom and I, and my dad was there too, and we were driven to the airport. It must have been like 6 o'clock in the morning or something, and we had to, all the dependents, the diplomatic dependents were kicked out of the country.
So your dad stayed behind?
My dad stayed behind. He wore a fashionable turquoise turtleneck. And the reason I remember that is you have to imagine the setting. We were at the airport, thousands and thousands of people milling in the airport. And you have two little girls, my sister, who was 4 years at the time, and I was 6 years, 6 years, or 7 years almost, and thousands of people. And we got lost. I got lost. I lost my parents.
Oh, scary.
And I remember being carried by people above the heads of people. You know, they held me above and they shoved me over to my parents. And in the meantime, my dad doesn't even remember that, but a 6-year-old child remembers that. My dad had thrown up all over his turquoise turtleneck because he was so stressed and so tense because he was worried about his family. He didn't know, if he's going to see them, whether or not he's going to see them again.
Was he concerned that whether he would survive what was going on?
No.
So he felt no threat toward him, but he felt the need that y'all had to exit the country.
Yeah, and that everything would go well and we wouldn't be. But you see, this was an official announcement. We were forced to leave. All the dependents from all the embassies.
Who called that order for y'all to leave?
I don't remember.
Okay.
But I assume that would have been an order from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Okay.
Either the Iranian one, no, it will be the Iranian one. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, not the Austrian one. And all dependents were they were thrown out, kicked out. And my mother was, she was stranded in Vienna. We had no apartment to go to because our apartment was leased at the time. And it was a tough time for my mother, separated from my dad with 2 young children. We had to find a school in the middle of the school year.
Now, with the time frame, and it might maybe construed a little bit, but is that during the time when the Americans were captured?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet.
But it was the forerunner to that time.
Yes. We're now in late 78.
Okay.
79, February, that's when Khomeini returned triumphantly, and everything changed, and basically all hell broke loose.
Okay.
And in November of 1979, November 4th, is when the embassy was taken over.
Okay, so you were a year
by so-called students.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and another interesting story to tell you about that. We always, my family, my sister, my mother and I always returned to Tehran during holidays. So we spent the summers in Iran, we spent Christmas time in Iran.
Wow.
And it was interesting because food had gotten scarce. And of course, I, as a young child, and my sister as well, we wouldn't have noticed that food had gotten scarce, but it did. And I was again told later on that my mother, during the hostage crisis, cooked for the 2 American hostages who were held in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. One of the hostages' name was Bruce Langen.
Wow.
He died just a couple of years ago. And my mother cooked food for them to be brought over to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And I remember I sat down and I wrote, in my very simple English, wrote Bruce Langen letters. And he would reply by, and I still have those at home, by watercoloring a piece of paper and writing, "This is what I imagine Austria looks like, and thank you so much for the food."
Wow.
Yeah, so that's that. Yeah.
Wow.
We did that, and I remember it to this day. And I remember also a photograph of my sisters, all skin and bones, because there wasn't enough food. But I never felt hungry. I'm just saying that the abundance that I see out here now is not what I grew up with.
No.
Okay.
No.
And 2 more stories from Iran. On July 31st, 1980, our Iranian housemaid burned down our house, and we were inside.
Say that again.
July 31st,
Yes.
1980, our Iranian maid, because she wanted to exact revenge on my mother and my father, set fire to our house, and we were inside.
Wow. What was her purpose for the revenge?
During the separation of my parents, of course, my mother had left all her stuff in Iran. I mean, she didn't need to lug it back and forth. So, you had all her nice clothes, her to go out and represent Austria, what have you, wedding photos, candle holders,
Everything. Yes.
Everything. Small stuff, big stuff. And apparently my mother, and again, this was all told to me because I'm too small.
Sure.
Apparently my dad didn't notice, but the maid, her name was Mariam, had stolen stuff, her things, and he never noticed because he wouldn't,
No, they
there's
weren't
no reason
his.
for him to go into her closet. And so she returned in the summer. We returned after school let out, which was probably the beginning of July, and my mother probably went into her closet, and there were things missing here and there. And I mean, who else would have done it?
Yeah.
Okay, who else could have done it? And I still remember the face. I remember Mariam's face. Her face is etched into my memory forever. And so July 31st, we took our afternoon nap because of the heat. And it was my mother, my sister, and I. We were in the master bedroom, and we tried to sleep, and we were all dressed. I just had my underwear on. My sister also had her underwear. My mother a very light nightgown because it was hot. And I remember there was banging at the door. I could hear it, the clanging. There was metal bars that surrounded our building, and I remember the master bedroom faced the street. And I pulled the curtains, looked out, and I looked to my left, and I saw there were some Iranian neighbors whom I recognized banging on the door, and there was some smoke billowing out from next door. I didn't know it was our building. I just said to my mom, "Oh my God, look, there seems to be some kind of smoke."
Wow.
And the next thing I remember is I opened the door to get out of the room, to the master bedroom, and the entire house
Was engulfed.
was in smoke, engulfed in smoke. I could not see a thing. Closed the door, and then we went on to the terrace. It was a very big terrace that we had facing the pool. By that time, our neighbors had entered the garden, pulled up a ladder
Wow.
and helped us
Get down.
get down. And the next memory I have is standing in the streets. I had been summoned. He came, and we were standing in one line. My mom in her nightgown, my sister and I in our underwear, my dad in his suit next to us, and American fire engines pulled up.
American fire.
American fire engines.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And it was pretty clear that it was Mariam, because, you know, these people have such gall. Okay, she would come a couple days later and ring the doorbell, and she wanted to return to work. And we found the accelerant in the house. She had actually left the accelerant in the house.
Wow.
Okay,
wow. So she was jealous of your mother returning because
she was angry that she was called out by my mother.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah,
okay.
And asked to return the stuff. So it was it was revenge. Yeah.
Wow.
That's what it
You
was.
said you had two stories. What's the other one? Does it come back to mind?
The other one was that my father flew out of Iran on the last flight before the Iran-Iraq war started.
Wow.
That was September 20th, 1980.
Mm.
So he left right in time.
So you literally grew up with a front row seat watching as the what we would consider now normal violence and the turmoil and the taking over situation that has erupted in the Middle East.
Yes.
How has that impacted you?
Well, before we get into that, that's not the only thing that impacted me.
Okay.
Because I also spent Christmas 1982 in Baghdad, Iraq. Because my dad was asked to fill in for the ambassador at that time. So I had the privilege of spending Christmas and New Year's in a war situation in Baghdad. I went to church there. Midnight Mass in Baghdad in 1982.
And at that time, there were still Catholic churches, Chaldean, and things
absolutely.
along that line.
Yeah, yeah.
But the Muslims were they rising up at that time or no?
No,
So,
Saddam Hussein was more of a secularist than a Muslim, and despite what people think, life under Saddam Hussein wasn't all that bad. I'm not defending a dictator, a brutal dictator.
No.
Okay?
But in comparison to when they allowed the Sunnis to take over and all of that.
Compared to what it is now?
Yeah.
Do you know how many Iraqis would like Saddam Hussein to come back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but that's a whole
Another story. True.
But what was fascinating to me in 1982 was the fact that I was in, what was it, I was a junior in high school at the time. Junior in high school? No. I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
6th grade. And we were in history class. We were studying the times of Euphrates, you know, the Sumerians, and the high culture of Babylon and all that.
Okay.
And guess what happens? I go to Baghdad and I go see all of that. Because we were in Baghdad during Christmas time, we visited Babylon. I went to places that I studied about in school.
Wow.
So that's another story. And so that impacted me. So I saw both sides. I saw Iran, and then I saw Iraq. And I would return to Iraq just 7 years later, and I'll get to that. And so in 1982, we spent in Baghdad, and then in 1983, we moved to Chicago. Those 4 years of junior
Culture
high
shock
school.
again.
Culture shock, yes, and absolutely, because I had to relearn English. I had lost it from the time of kindergarten to my return, but it never does leave you, okay? Because it's
in there somewhere.
In the back of your mind, and it took me just the summer months I had some private tutoring together with my sister. And by the time I entered school in September, I was back to fluent, and I was an honor student all through those 4 years. And yeah, so, and what has, and I will talk about that also in my speeches. I have been left with a profound appreciation for the American Constitution. The beauty of the American Constitution has impacted me. It fascinates me.
There's nowhere else in the world that has anything similar.
No.
That's why people want to come.
And it's a perfect piece of, I would call it even a perfect piece of paper. You don't need more than that. It's simple. And I studied the Constitution in 8th grade. And it is so amazing that an 8th grader would understand a Constitution. That shows the brilliance.
Yes.
That shows the brilliance. And I back then, you know, I was in the midst of puberty, searching for my identity.
Oh,
I
yeah.
spoke perfect English. I was completely assimilated. I was an American girl, just with an Austrian passport.
Mm-hmm.
And I sat in school, and Mrs. Felix, my social studies teacher, tried to hammer in the American Constitution. She was a very staunch Democrat at the time, of course, as was everybody else in Chicago. And I kept on resisting her, and I kept on saying, why do I have to study that? I'm an Austrian. I should learn my own Constitution first before I study the American Constitution. But then again, you know, what can I do? I was in America, and I had no choice. I got a C. I still have the test at home. We'll never forget it. I got 79%, which was pretty good because her tests were very strict. Everybody feared the Constitution test. Mm-hmm. So I did that, and I would never have guessed that so many years later, this test and this studying for the Constitution test would affect me so profoundly. Because along with Geert Wilders of the Netherlands, I call for a First Amendment in Europe because we don't have that. But again, I'm jumping ahead of myself. Okay, so after we returned to Austria, I finished school, graduated from high school in 1989, and then didn't know what I was going to do. Mm-hmm. So I did what a good Austrian does. I became a ski instructor.
Oh, of course.
Of course. You're probably wondering where she's going with this. Well, you can't really ski all year. So my dad calls me up one day and says, well, how would you feel about going to Kuwait for the summer months? They need somebody to work in the visa section and stamp visas. And I said, hey, well, Kuwait, yeah, why not, you know? Fun.
Wow.
Why not? I'll make some money. I'll enjoy myself there, and I'll stamp some visas. This was May of 1990. Do you know where I'm getting? Do you know where I'm going with this?
Oh, yes, I do believe
Guess
I
where
do.
Elizabeth was on August 2nd,
Oh my
1990.
goodness. Yes, yes.
I woke up on August 2nd, 1990,
Wow.
and what I had predicted...
Front row seat again.
Pardon?
Front row seat again on history.
Once again, and it never ends because I have more front row seats. I had predicted the weeks before and the days before that Saddam would invade Kuwait, and everybody was like in the embassy. I remember we were standing in the office talking with the ambassador and the secretaries, and here was a 19-year-old, I was 19 years at the time, here was a 19-year-old saying, look guys, you know, I know this guy. He's not at the amassing troops at the border for nothing, at the Iraqi-Kuwaiti border for nothing. He has plans. No, everybody said, no, it's not going to happen. He's just there to scare the Kuwaitis into giving up the drilling rights and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, watch me. My predictions will come true. And so it was on August 2nd, 1990. My phone rings. I lived in the embassy compound, the embassy building, and the phone rings at 4:30 in the morning, and an Austrian guy calls me up and he says, oh my God, you know, look outside, there's something going on, it's weird, there's troops everywhere. And I remember going to the window, looking outside, everything was quiet, I'm like, no, there's nothing. And I hung up the phone and I thought, okay, maybe he's drunk. Who knows? 2 hours later, I do hear the helicopters hovering above the city. To this day, I can't listen to helicopters, it scares me.
Oh my.
And I saw the first troops in the street, and the tanks. And I knew we were in trouble.
For those of us, which none of us have been in that position before, what is your first thoughts when something like that occurs?
I grabbed the maid from upstairs, from the other family residing above me, grabbed the Egyptian maid, took my car, went to the local co-op, and went shopping.
For survival.
Canned
Yeah.
food,
Water, basics.
water, basics, yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Nobody else did that. Everybody else bought, I remember they bought newspapers, and I saw the Kuwaitis next to me. Oh, everybody was just calm. Nothing happens, nothing to see, let's move on. No, I went shopping. I went shopping. I knew exactly what I was 19 years old.
Did you have any thoughts of fleeing to get out of that situation?
No, not at all, because I knew I had no chance. Where does one go in the desert?
Oh, true.
You don't survive in the desert.
Yeah.
It was the middle of the summer, the hottest time of the year.
Yes.
True.
Okay.
Where do you go? So I stayed put. The safest place for a diplomat is in the embassy compound, embassy building. I had my diplomatic passport.
Unless you're in Benghazi.
Unless you're in Benghazi,
Yeah.
and you have Hillary Clinton as your boss.
Yeah.
No, but we had fairly good people sitting in the Foreign Office in Vienna. Fairly, I say fairly, but we don't need to get into that.
Yeah.
So within a few days, we knew that we weren't going to get out. Things were settling down to become permanent. I didn't leave the building anymore. I wasn't allowed to, because the first rapes had occurred. An Austrian Airlines crew was stranded in Kuwait, so the ambassador went to pick them up after the first crew member was raped. So they were moved into the embassy. So we were just this one group of happy people, lots of Austrians flocking in from all over the country to seek safety. And so we were basically stuck with each other, a bunch of people from all different backgrounds, and we waited. What would happen to us?
And how long was that wait?
That wait was initially 2 weeks, because then Saddam said, okay, the annexation of Kuwait, foreigners were not allowed to leave the country anymore, borders closed, and the negotiations started. And we were in the embassy, and we didn't do anything all day except for, I don't know, sit around, watch TV, watch movies. It was very tough mentally.
Was there plenty of food?
Interestingly enough, yes.
Okay,
and you know
good.
why? Because God had a way of helping us. One of the cooks who worked at one of the 5-star hotels was Austrian, so he sought refuge in the embassy.
And he brought the groceries, no?
Almost. And
Okay.
there was a general manager of another 5-star hotel who said, you're going to pick up all the frozen food because I don't want the Iraqis to eat that food. I want you to have it.
Wow.
So we had, oh my God, you cannot imagine.
Praise God.
We had the most wonderful food. I mean, that was the least of our worries, okay? The food was not a problem at all. So we were stuck there for about 2.5 weeks, and then things started to roll because all of a sudden we watched a newscast, and Saddam Hussein had proclaimed that citizens of the so-called neutral countries, Austria, Switzerland, Finland, Sweden, there was no European Union at the time, thank God. And I think Portugal was in there too. Those citizens are allowed to leave. But don't think we're allowed to leave the easy way to cross into Saudi Arabia. No. We had to travel from Kuwait via Baghdad up to the Turkish border. 1,500 kilometers, which is about, 1,200 miles, 1,300 miles, something like that. In the hottest desert air you can imagine.
And what was your means of transportation? Vehicle?
Car.
Okay.
Car.
Okay.
Problem was,
At least it wasn't
also-
camels.
Yeah, but we had a lot of cars,
Uh-huh.
and if you're not skilled in the art of traveling in a convoy, that gets hard. That's a challenge.
Not bad.
None of us knew how to travel in a convoy, so no cell phones, of course, no means of getting in touch with each other, and not the biggest problem that I had, because I was scared to a certain degree, because at the time we didn't know whether the Americans would start bombing Kuwait and or Iraq, and this desert is a flat desert. Okay, it's an arid, flat desert with shrubs. Now, where do you hide? Where do you seek shelter?
When you're out in the middle of it, yeah.
So, we were a convoy of I don't know, 30 cars maybe.
Wow.
And what was going to happen to us? So that was scary. Another interesting experience I had was I was worried because I drink a lot of water. Okay, I always drink. That's my upbringing from all these desert countries. I drink all the time. But drinking means you have to go to the bathroom. You have to go and relieve yourself.
Yes.
How do you do that in a desert? How do you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting way the body deals with this. Because you're so stressed, your body shuts down and you don't go. And the minute it got dark is when I jumped out of the car in the middle of a black desert. There was no light.
No lights.
We just stopped, opened the door, did our business, jumped back into the car.
Whoa.
That is very interesting how the body deals with that.
Wow.
So you drink and drink and drink and you never have to go to the bathroom because you're so stressed, so tense, so worried. So that was an interesting aspect of the whole trip. And then we went to Baghdad. We're stuck in Baghdad for a couple of days because Saddam had playing games with us again. He said the border was closed, the border to Turkey was closed, we couldn't go there. So we had 2 nights in Baghdad, courtesy of Saddam Hussein. And then finally we were allowed to go to drive up to the Turkish border. Now, I'm going to tell you this story because it's made a profound effect. It's had a profound effect on my life. Because we traveled again during the night. It was very dark. We had a couple of video recorders the adults had packed in order to bribe the military. And we went up through...
Who's the military? Okay.
There was no other military at the time.
Okay.
And we drove up into the mountains, and this is the area that there's a lot of fighting going on right now. This would be the Kurdish area. And we drove up there, and of course there were army checkpoints, and they wouldn't let us go through unless we gave them, we bribed them with VCRs. And then we arrived at the border, Zahul it was called, into Turkey. And it was eerie because there was almost no light, and to the left, this was a mountainous area, to the left and to the right there were thousands of people sleeping. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. Thousands of people on the ground sleeping.
And this was where? This was where?
Up in the
hills.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's actually mountains.
Okay. All right.
Crossing border area between Iraq or Kurdish Iraq into Turkish.
Turkey. Okay.
The Turkish area for the Turkish Kurdish area.
Okay.
And it was 3 o'clock in the morning, and the border was closed. So again, we had to bribe the border guards,
Wow.
to open the border for us. And then we started haggling because between Baghdad and the border area, the rules had changed. Saddam was playing games with us again. At first, he said everybody was allowed to leave the country.
Ooh.
And by the time we got to the border, they had orders, border guards had orders, only 18 passports were allowed to leave, and we had to choose who.
Oh my goodness. How many were there in your group?
About 30.
Oh wow.
30 plus. And there were a lot of kids, some of them were very ill. And we were able to, not I, but our group leader was able to negotiate with the border guards and made a deal that it would be passports counted, not heads. So back then, if you remember, our passports back then were just a paper document with photograph stuck into the, there's no high-tech passports back then.
No, no.
So what did we do? We broke multiple laws and added the children onto the passports, even though those weren't the parents.
Oh my.
So we got the kids out.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Praise God. So your whole group made it through?
No.
No?
No.
Who had to stay?
I did. I did.
Who else? Just you?
No, a couple of others, yeah. We were about 15, 20 who were left behind. So, and it was one of the hardest images. These people who were allowed to cross the borders versus the people who were left behind. And for the first time, people actually, we all broke down crying because we didn't know if we were going to survive that.
Right.
And at first I was on the list to cross the border, and I said, no, I want the kids to go instead of me because my mother has another daughter if I don't make it.
Ooh.
Those were my thoughts, okay? And so we got those people and their cars across the borders. We packed up our stuff, drove back to Mosul.
Wow.
Drove back to Mosul, checked into a hotel, got drunk.
Healthy medicine that night, I bet.
Yeah, got drunk that night. There was still, thank God, there was still enough beer. And we just waited. We just waited. And then fate or God or whoever intervened. 2 or 3 days later, we got a message that the Austrian president, Kurt Waldheim, had negotiated with Saddam Hussein to get us out.
Yes. Praise God. Wow.
So we were then shipped on Saddam Hussein's private airplane from Mosul to Baghdad, from Baghdad on to Amman, and from Amman an Austrian Airlines plane picked us up.
Oh good, you got a faster passage.
Yes, and we returned us to Vienna.
Wow.
Trust me, that flight from Amman, Jordan, back to Vienna was one drunk party going on. Okay. So that was that. Okay.
Wow.
I did have PTSD. A lot of post-traumatic stress.
I don't doubt that.
A lot of post-traumatic stress. Back then, nobody knew about it, so
No.
it wasn't treated.
No.
It took me a long time to get over it. It was very, very difficult.
What were your triggers besides helicopters?
Seeing the war on TV.
Oh wow.
Seeing
That's hard to
footage
avoid.
out of Kuwait.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a lot of smells, of course. Those were the triggers. I had nightmares.
Wow.
And I remember I was up in the mountains in November. So we returned in August of 1990, late August. And in November I went back to the mountains to finish up a ski testing. I had to do another. That's when the post-traumatic stress disorder kicked in.
Oh my.
Because all of a sudden I couldn't ski anymore, and I had to be transported back to,
Oh my.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, down the mountain. I could not ski anymore.
Wow, what a story. We could go
Yeah.
on.
I'm finished with that.
Yeah, but oh my gosh. I mean, I cannot imagine having, you're 19 years old, and to have walked through all of these situations and journeys. Let's speed the time up. You're seeing a lot of things happening now in your home, all around you there in Europe.
Yeah.
What is your feeling about what's going on now?
Don't you want to know how I got into this?
Well, it's a great opening, yes.
Because otherwise, if I don't finish the story, we
that's
have
right.
to get.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I know you're the boss, but in this case, I have to.
You know where you're going. Go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I returned to Kuwait.
Oh my.
In 1997.
Okay.
The same job was opening again, and I'm the kind of person, if I start something, I want to end it on my terms. But I ended Kuwait in 1990 on Saddam Hussein's terms. I'm not doing that, so I returned. And I went back to the same place, the same office, the same bed, everything.
Wow.
Nothing had changed.
Kind of like we say in West Texas, get back on the horse if it throws you off.
And,
okay.
Yeah, and that's it was important for my psyche.
Yeah.
to return, to finish it off. So
Was it healing? Did you get
I did get some
closure?
healing, but you know, if you remember our history in 1998 and the Tomahawk missiles that were sent whoosh to get Saddam again, and I heard the impact because I was on the phone with some of the United Nations officers who were stationed at the border. I had the gas mask and everything at home. I had the syringes just in case there was a chemical war. So, you know, I've been through all of that. I know it, and still I had a good time. I experienced Islam, and now we're getting to the point, as an adult.
Yeah.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. And I started asking questions, which is never good, especially when it comes to Islam. You don't ask questions, but I did. And I started figuring out that there was something wrong. And I started rebelling. I hated Ramadan with a passion. I kept rebelling. I kept doing everything that was prohibited during Ramadan. I ate my salami sandwich, which I had imported from Austria, on purpose. I went to the visa section and they could all see me eating that salami sandwich. I loved it. And I cooked. And everybody in the building who was Muslim had to smell my cooking. And they were probably hungry. And I did not feel bad at all.
Yeah.
They were fasting. Not my problem. Embassy is Austrian territory. You can do whatever you want. This is my country. Then the Aisha thing came up, and this is important with my, I got in trouble with the law in Austria because of Aisha.
What is that?
Aisha is Muhammad's child bride. The Prophet Muhammad married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage when she was 9. I didn't know that. But my job was also to read the papers, the English language papers published in Kuwait. And one day there was something about Muhammad and Aisha, and I went running to our interpreter and I said, oh my God, is this true? This is disgusting. And I was great friends with our interpreter. And all of a sudden, he looked at me and he said, and he hissed, he didn't say it.
Oh my.
Hissed, don't you ever question that again.
Whoa.
And that was strange.
Whoa.
And to make a long story short, I met my husband in Kuwait. He was serving the Austrian army in Kuwait as a military observer, which was very nice. So we met there and got married met in 99, got married in 2000. In 2000, I was sick and tired of Kuwait, and I asked to be posted somewhere else. Well, that somewhere else turned out to be Libya.
Oh my goodness.
So I spent the final year in Libya, and I'd always wanted to go to Libya, wanted to see it. And I knew that life for a diplomat in a totalitarian-run country can be good. I knew that because of Saddam Hussein. Okay? It's not an easy life for the people living there, but for diplomats, that's the way it is. Well, it wasn't. It was actually hell. It was 1 year of hell. But I'm glad I was there because now I can tell you that it's even worse nowadays. And I just wish, and there comes a little criticism of the United States, much as I love it, please stay out of these countries. They don't want democracy. They're not interested in democracy. They don't want to vote. They have a different...
Their mindset's totally different.
Completely. They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Okay? It's while it is a noble idea for the United States and the Western world to want to export the idea of democracy, it is simply wrong. Look what it did to Afghanistan. Look what it did to Iraq. Look what it did to Libya. Look what it's doing to Syria. Get out of there. Let those people sort it out for themselves. That's my advice. I know it's criticism, but I have to say it. Okay. So enough of that. So my husband and I return. I go back to graduate school, get my degree, and after I got my degree.
And that's where? Where'd you go to school for that?
Vienna.
In Vienna.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to a small private American university. So in 2004, I had my daughter, and she's the light of my life, and she is the reason I'm doing this. This meaning, once again, Elisabeth does what she shouldn't be doing, but she asks questions and she reads books. And I picked up a book called Gabriel's Whisperings. That's not the English title, it has since been translated into English, but back then the German title was Gabriel's Whisperings. It was a book written by an Indian atheist on Islam, based solely on Islamic scripture and other historical evidence.
Documents.
Whatever. Nothing from the Western world. Okay.
So it was the Book of Muhammad, the Surah,
It just told the story. You know, told the story about the moon god and you know how Islam came to be, based on Islamic history and okay, what have you. And that book made a profound impact on me, and it scared me because for the first time I read everything. You know, I read the conquest of the Arabian Peninsula. I read about the beheadings of Jews by Muhammad and Aisha sitting next to him watching. I read about all the atrocities, and it made me want to weep, and I felt so helpless and so alone, and I was like, oh my God, I'm the only one who realizes this. Who am I going to talk to? But then again, God had a way of intervening, and he hooked me up with like-minded people, both in Vienna and in the US. So I got, somehow, because of my English, I got on Blog Talk Radio. Somebody heard me from Center for Security Policy, and all of a sudden, like that, my career skyrocketed. Career, quote unquote, of course. And I mean, I haven't looked back since. I've read everything there is to read, or most everything, both in English and in German. And I think I've become quite proficient in Islamic theology and...
Do you think it's a theology or an ideology?
It's both.
Okay.
I would say it's 70-30. It's 70 ideology with some religious...
Just a touch.
Just a touch, just to very insidiously put into the system. I think it's it's probably the most intelligent system ever created. And that's what makes it so scary. It is so much worse and so much more dangerous than National Socialism, than Stalinism, than North Korean Stalinism.
Yeah, because instead of being a government against people, it turns people against people.
Exactly, and you don't become a communist. You're not born a communist. You're not born a National Socialist, but you're made into one. But you're born into into the Muslim faith, and you have no chance of leaving.
Yeah.
Okay, without death. So this is, and by God, I'm not belittling any of those ideologies, but look at, your 1400 years of Islamic ideology versus a couple, I don't know, decades of not even National Socialism was gone pretty fast. But communism is still with us, of course, and it's a big menace. But Islam is really
it's real.
It's
and
really real, and it's got more dead, like what Bill Warner says, 270 million plus. I mean, the Holocaust didn't kill 270 million.
Wow,
and
that's a huge
it's
statistic.
all encompassing, it's the entire world.
The 270 million, that encompasses what all, to tally up?
1,400 years.
Okay, wow, okay.
That's what Bill Warner counts, with all the Hindus and all the Sikhs and all the Buddhists and the Christian persecution, and that's what he...
And it's expanding and multiplying so quickly today. So,
and that's what we see today.
And you're going to go into this evening talking about the refugee.
I'm going to talk about the refugees. So let me go back. Okay. Why did I noticed in the 1990s when I was in Kuwait how my country was changing, because I was gone for most of the year. And
your country being Austria, the home base.
Austria was changing. I return to Austria once a year for a month. And I was always relieved to leave the realm of Islam and return to freedom in Austria. And in 1998 or 9, I started noticing a change, a lot more headscarves.
Interesting, because being away is like not seeing a child for a year, and you can very much identify how much growth and change.
That's where I first realized that there's a change going on. Of course, I didn't know what I know now.
So you were seeing the hijabs or whatever they call them? And,
yeah, the hijabs and so many more, okay? There were always some wearing it. But I took public transportation into town, and I would see more and more and more people. I saw a change in the demographics.
What was the initial amount of Muslims that were in Austria when you were a young child?
I would say maybe 80,000, 100,000.
Which would be like what percent? Because not knowing the population.
Back then it was 7 million, 6.8 or 7 million.
Okay.
And now
Some
we're up
minuscule.
to... And and now the population is at 8.2 million, something like that, give or take. And officially, the numbers has been constant at 500,000, which is not true. We estimate the number being at least twice as much, about 1 million.
Wow.
And with the refugees, probably a lot more, probably 1.2.
So this growth has been by not only their high birth rate, but also the refugee situation.
Yeah.
Are they refugees or immigrants into your country?
Yeah, but you also have to remember we had the Bosnian War, so we had lots of Muslims already coming in the 1990s.
Oh, okay. See, not living there, we don't keep, or I personally.
Why would you know?
Yeah,
Why would you know?
Yeah.
That's why I'm here. To
Good.
talk all about that. Yeah, and that's when I first noticed the change. And that's also what prompted me to look into it more.
So as you're seeing the different clothing, it's not an issue of, the style is changing in dress, but it is how their culture is impacting your country.
Exactly, because it's not just the dress. It is the entire lifestyle that they're importing. It's not just more hijabs you see. You see more run-down strip malls with Turkish shops and bakeries, and you see more mosques. And you know how it is, you don't just have a mosque, you have an entire shopping center and
then they have the halal meats and
you have the halal meats, and that's making its way into our society.
There's several here in San Antonio.
Of course, but the thing is, people don't know what halal means.
No, they don't.
They think it's just like eating, Jewish food or
kosher.
It's no big deal. It's whether it's halal or kosher, it doesn't make a difference. Yes, it does. It does. Halal is insidious. Again, it's dangerous. I could go into many reasons why halal should be banned. Not only halal food, but halal banking. It's all the same. Okay, it's not just the slaughtering. We're being slaughtered at the bank as well.
Yeah.
So with all the Islamic banking and
that funding is going back to terrorism, from what I understand. Yes.
Exactly. And this is, you have the Islamic kindergartens in Vienna. You have a language problem, huge language problem. These kids, second, third generation, they don't speak any German. So how are they going to get a job?
No. They don't come to become a part of the new country or culture. They're demanding, they're forcing theirs. Yes.
They're bringing their own country, and this is fueled by Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan, who comes to Germany, has the gall to come to Germany, in a big stadium, 70,000 Turks, German Turks, waving their red flags, and Erdogan saying, assimilation is a crime against humanity.
Woo!
Okay? In public.
Assimilation is a crime against humanity.
Exactly.
That's hard for my brain to wrap itself around those words, but Yeah, but that is the reality
Yeah.
with the Muslims.
Yes, and that's what's happening, and we're being, it's now little Turkey. We're being overrun by Turkey, we're being overrun by Afghans, we're being overrun by so-called Syrian refugees, but not by Christians. We're not being overrun by Christians.
Is the core Austrians, is there any desire base or a group of people in Austria that want their country back? Or are they accepting of what's coming?
I, along with my like-minded colleagues, and we're a relatively fairly small group of people, but we're very tenacious. Okay? I've been hauled into court, and I'm not being silenced, as you can tell, because I'm here. Even though I'm in the free state of Texas and I can say whatever I want. But again, even in Austria, I'm not silenced. They will not shut me up. Anyway, my group and I have been talking about this and talking about this and talking about this for 8 years now. More than 8 years. And I can tell you one thing. I have been called all sorts of names. I have been shunned. I have been ostracized. I have been, I've lost my job. I have, you know, people look and look down upon me. Oh, that silly cow, basically. They're probably thinking, oh, she's into her conspiracy theories again. Well, I can tell you one thing. My neighbor, one of my neighbors, is one of Austria's highest ranking police officers. We're very friendly with him. He's a very nice guy. And I used to talk to him and tell him about my concerns, and he always sort of, in a nice way, brushed me off. Recently, during the height of the immigration wave into Austria, he came to my apartment, we talked and we chatted, and there were two things he said to me. So I started out by asking him, I don't want to know any details, but I'm sure you play sort of, you guys at the police, he's a police officer, he's into organized crime, that's his specialty. I'm sure that you at the crime lab or wherever you are, you discuss certain scenarios about what's going to play out in Europe with this immigration crisis. And I said, I don't want to know about them, I don't care. I probably know most of them anyway. But is there any scenario that unfolds in a peaceful way that you have discussed, you guys over there? And he said, no. And the second thing he said to me is, we should have listened to you 10 years ago.
So is his feeling that it's too late?
It's over. He said it's over.
So what, in your opinion, based on what you've lived, how do we turn this around?
We don't.
Can we stop it?
We don't.
So what do we do?
We prepare.
Wow.
I see very small glimmers, but what is the worst for me, and what really, really depresses me, is the church.
They've abandoned.
Completely. And if we can't count on the church, who can we count on? They are gone. I mean, look at what the Pope did a couple of days ago. He goes to Lesbos Island in Greece and picks up 6 families, Muslim families. No, we're not picking up Christians. No, we don't need to help Christians, right?
Right.
No, we need Muslims.
Yeah.
Muslims in the Vatican. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And how can there be any hope if the church abandons us? You probably got, your next question will probably be, well, why are you still doing what you do if you don't have any hope?
Because you have to.
Because I have a daughter.
Yeah, that's
And
right. You've got to.
I have a future to give to her. I'm leaving behind something for her. And I want my daughter to know that I did everything I personally could. I couldn't stop it. I can't stop it. I can't. we Europeans are being persecuted. I will talk about that tonight. But I owe it to my daughter, the love of my life, to continue, because I want her to know her mommy did everything in her power to stop it. I want her to be proud of me. I want her to know that that this is the reality. I'm not leaving her behind a fairy tale and everything's just dandy and just she knows exactly what's going on.
And you showed me at breakfast the
Yes,
alarm
the alarm
that she carries and
yeah.
you carry. So that alarm, let's go back to the alarm. So if something happens that creates fear or concern, you set that alarm off?
Yeah.
And,
you want me to show you?
Sure.
We're
Okay.
in a room right now. We can do it.
Okay.
Okay. Very
Now,
simple.
we didn't do it in IHOP this morning because we didn't want to create
Probably
a
would have been a good idea. I hope I can find it. Yeah, here it is.
And it's
This is
attached
the
to your
alarm.
purse so you can't
Yes.
lose it.
No, and I hold it in my hand
Okay.
when I walk the street.
Okay, so you've got
Okay.
your purse and you have that ready to go. Wow. So when you set that off,
And this is, sorry, this is a bestseller right now.
okay, when you set that off, is that to scare somebody
Yes,
away?
Yes,
Okay.
and hoping that somebody will come to the rescue.
Help. That immediate fear of something happening, are you talking about, as we're hearing in the news here, kind of more on Facebook posts than regular news, about the women being raped? Is that one of the primary
Yes.
fears, is
Yes.
rape?
Assault, rape.
Assault, rape. And the Muslim men, are they the ones that,
Yeah.
are they pressing it?
Oh yeah, you read it every single day in the papers.
Yeah. It's hard in our culture here to understand the openness. This is not behind doors. This is not in a back alley. This is in the middle of town squares and public, and no one will report it. No one will, even in the Quran it says you have to have 4 men bear witness that you were raped, and of course they won't, because that's part of their culture that they're allowed to do it. And Americans cannot believe that that is such a thing. Our culture, our mindset cannot fathom what is truth beyond our shores.
Mm-hmm.
And we, with our open hearts and Christian background, caring and loving, want to bring in and don't realize the Trojan horse that's coming.
The Christian love, first love your family and then love your neighbors. And you can tell me a lot of things, but the Syrians are not my neighbors. Okay? The Syrian Christians maybe, but the Syrian Muslims are not my neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
They are Saudi Arabia's neighbors, they are the Gulf states' neighbors, they are Jordan's neighbors, Egypt,
Mm-hmm.
But of course then you have, like you said, the Trojan horse, and you have the immigration, and then you look into the Quran and you find certain verses saying that you have to immigrate and emulate.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes.
Muhammad's, whatever Muhammad did in his life, a devout Muslim man has to emulate him. So what did Muhammad do? He emigrated from Mecca to Medina. And that's where the Islamic calendar started. And that's where the hijrah comes from. The term hijrah means emigration. So the devout Muslim is supposed to emigrate from his own lands to foreign lands in order to bring Islam to these people, because
To the infidels.
And because Allah says peace on earth will only reign when the entire world has submitted to Islam.
In which most cases means the infidel has been annihilated.
Annihilated or subjugated,
Yeah.
demified.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening, and it's aided and abetted by our politicians, and that is the reason I'm even if there is a result, even if there's a chance of resolving this, it's going to be extremely bloody.
Yeah.
So in my mind, I am preparing for war. I know it's coming. It has to.
And
The
it's not,
situation is explosive.
and it's more a one-on-one war versus,
It's not
country.
going to be anything like we've seen.
no,
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 it's not going to be two armies.
no.
I don't even think it's going to be, it's going to be a civil war. It's going to be something completely different.
Yeah. I agree with you. The beautiful Europe that we've all read about and grew up knowing from here. The Australian that I interviewed just last week or spent some time with, his grandparents live in Germany and another set live in Greece. And he said it's no longer, it's in London, everywhere, that it is just, do you think it's safe for Americans with their lack of understanding and knowledge to travel in European countries now?
Oh, I would do it still. It can happen anywhere.
Yeah.
No, I don't agree with the State Department's issuing of a travel warning. I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
Okay, because it's, I mean, I wouldn't, that's the beauty of terrorism. How are you gonna, how are you gonna know where
Well
it's
said.
next?
Well said. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just because of that, to cancel a trip to Europe, I don't think so.
Yeah.
It could happen to me coming to the US. Did I
Yeah.
cancel? No.
Yeah.
Okay? No. We should all
Live life.
continue living our lives and be aware. And you know what the most important thing is? Don't stop traveling, but educate yourself about this danger.
Yes.
There is no excuse not knowing what is going on. Hitler had his blueprint. He told everybody what he was planning to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so does Islam. Islam has its book and it
Yes.
says exactly what the plan is.
Uh-huh.
How about if we wake up and if we woke
Pay
up
attention.
and listen and pay attention? Why are we repeating this?
Yes, again.
Okay, we're doing the same thing, and we're in a worse situation than our forefathers were in the 1930s.
Yeah.
Especially because the United States has been so weakened.
Oh, true.
I don't think Europe can right now count on the U.S. to save it.
Not with this president.
Not with the state of the country.
True. True.
Okay,
Wow.
so this is another point that I'm making to tell you how scary the whole situation is. There will be no shores of the Normandy. Right now,
Yeah.
not a chance. So this is my
Wow.
message to the American people.
Wow. What a powerful story. I had no idea of your story. And thank you so much
You're
for
very
sharing. Brought me to tears at a couple of
I know.
parts. I cannot imagine living the life that you lived.
It's made me stronger,
Yes.
you know?
I look forward to hearing
There will be more.
what you're going to talk about this evening. So those of y'all listening in, do be sure to tune in and watch the presentation that she will be doing this evening here for Act for America in San Antonio. You'll be talking about the refugee situation
And my court case.
and her court case. So much more to still hear. Elizabeth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoy your time in Texas.
Oh, I am.
And look forward to hearing much more from you in the
Thank you
future.
so much.
Appreciate it.